Thank you, Sipgate, for supporting us. The floor is yours.
Okay, check the microphone. Yeah, it's working. Welcome, everybody. First of all, thank you, Daniel, for organizing this great event and having us here in Berlin. I want to tell you how we automated Kamailio updates at Sipgate. Few words about me and my employer. My name is Jonas Böttner, and I'm a voice engineer at Sipgate. I actually quit my part-time job as a ship captain a few years ago. Some of you might remember. What is Sipgate? Sipgate offers modern cloud-based telephony solutions with a strong focus on business customers. We provide a wide range of telco automation tools, including CRM integrations or intelligent call routing. One of our latest product directions is improving productivity for power users through great user experience, like call summaries and other cool features enabled by large language models. And Sipgate is based in the beautiful Rhineland in Düsseldorf, and we offer services to Germany and the UK. And from a technical telco perspective, some key facts. We maintain interconnects with all major carriers, at least in Germany. We are full MVNO in the mobile net of Telefonica. We run our own infrastructure from rack space and network to server hardware, and make heavy use of open source telco software. Our stack includes Kamailio, Asterisk, Yate, and RTP engine. And internally, we like to say hacking telco. That's our slogan for building telco products with open source tools. So let's start. Sipgate loves Kamailio. As you can see, we are using it a lot. On the customer-facing side, the yellow items, we use Kamailio as a load balancer for IPv4, IPv6, UDP, TCP. We also use it as a SIP proxy for interworking with carriers. We run Kamailio on all of our interconnects as a classic SBC. To connect the interconnection setups with Sipgate, we use a load balancer based on Kamailio. One of the more interesting setups, we use Kamailio as a gateway to extract parts of SIP messages, to write them to databases, or to produce messages to Kafka nodes. This allows us to replicate registration status to the backend systems. To fulfill lawful interception requirements, Kamailio sniffs ZIP messages and triggers, let's call it, further interception handling. And another use case is the Volte media adapter. We transcode the RTP from Volte devices to Sipgate to prevent DTX issues. It's discontinuous transmission. I talked about that in 5 minutes, 5 slides on Kamailio World 2 years ago. Yeah, before talking about updates, I'd like to give a quick overview of Kamailio at Sipgate. Every Kamailio instance runs on a virtual machine. All our VMs using Debian Linux, and they are managed by an internal infrastructure team. We use Ansible, both for provisioning and for configuration management. We build our own Kamailio packages so we can ensure reproducible builds and know exactly which version we are running at a given point at any given point in time. Our Kamailio setups exist 2 times in development and 2 to 4 times in production. So in total, that adds up to 80 Kamailio instances at Sipgate. And when I counted them for this presentation, I was a bit surprised myself. Every virtual machine at Sipgate performs unattended upgrades. So we need to make sure our service handles that smoothly. We are a team of 6 voice engineers, and there's a lot of internal coordination to keep our setups as consistent as possible. And of course, every system provides observability with metrics, alerting, logging, and more to ensure we have operational insights. Why should we update our Kamailios regularly? Debian releases a new version about every 2 years, so why should we bother updating our operating system? Security is the biggest reason. Updated kernels and libraries, fix vulnerabilities. Keep in mind some of our Kamailios are directly reachable through the internet due to our bring your own device policy. We benefit from newer packages which can bring bug fixes or performance improvements, and to stay compatible with our ecosystem, including continuous integration, continuous deployment pipelines, monitoring, and our logging stack. A real example, our infrastructure team drops support for old distributions from time to time. And if we don't update, we might eventually lose the ability to deploy changes or even reconfigure the network or something like that. Fun fact, I started with Debian Edge in 2007, and since then I've seen 8 Debian releases come and go. And to be clear, operating system updates aren't directly about Kamailio, but they are still part of the setup, and you can't run Kamailio without a solid operating system underneath. Most of the arguments apply for dependencies too. Security, performance, compatibility are the key reasons. And of course, Kamailio itself. Make use of new features or modules. For example, we needed a Kafka producer in Kamailio. A Kafka module was introduced in version 5.4, and more features have been added since then. And bug fixes. Another example, some modules didn't play nicely with Prometheus monitoring, and in Kamailio 5.8 there was support for TLS info, or the WebSocket connections weren't counted correctly before Kamailio 5.8. Now let's talk about Kamailio. Where's the problem? After all, it's just apt install Kamailio and systemctl restart Kamailio, and you're done. So where's the problem? At one time, I stumbled across a talk by Dan McKinley, and the talk was about the importance of choosing well-understood tools and about valuing simplicity in engineering decisions. And there was one slide in that presentation that blew my mind, this one. And the corresponding quote was from Dan McKinley: "Operating a piece of technology at a professional level turns out to be really hard. It's easy to get started with technology, but harder to do a really good job with it. Installing or updating Kamailio is easy, but running Kamailio at a professional level, that's the hard part. We have to think about operating system, config management, package managers, deployment, metrics, monitoring, logging, alerting, testing, scaling, and a lot more." Let's come back to Kamailio updates at Sipgate. What are the challenges for us? We have an evolving operating system. Some examples: in Debian, the init system changed from classic init scripts to systemd service unit. The scheduled jobs once run via cron, and now we use systemd timers. Logging used to be go to log files with syslog. Now logs are pushed to a remote logging system and accessed through Grafana Loki. Over the time, our observability stack changed. We used Telegraph, InfluxDB, and Grafana in the past, but our infrastructure team switched to Prometheus. Log shipping began with Beaver, then we moved to Filebeat, and now we use Vector for that. And alerting, we have a really old Isinga alerting, but it's in transition to Alert Manager. The delivery stack. For deployments in the past, we used Jenkins, and we migrated that to GitHub Actions. We use Ansible for config management, but playbooks need regular updates. Another thing is downtime, but as mentioned earlier, we use unattended upgrades on all virtual machines So our setups are redundant and we don't have to worry much about downtime. For capacity, we operate at no more than 50% total capacity at any time. So this gives us what we call dual data center failover capacity. Even if one side goes down, the other can take over without performance issues. So we shouldn't have any problems with capacity too. And finally, test coverage. At the time of our first Kamailio updates, we had some end-to-end tests. They helped us catch major errors after a rollout, which was great, but weren't detailed enough to catch smaller functional issues. How did we do Kamailio updates in the past? We did them one by one. As you can see, the first Kamailio setup took from July to November 2022, about 5 months. After the second setup took about 3 to 4 months, the third one another 3 months, and so on. And after some time, the most important setups were updated. But the time span for updating some Kamailio setups ended up being 2.5 years. And there are still some setups left to update in our backlog. An excuse could be we had a lot of work to do beside Kamailio updates. Yeah, that's kind of true. We implemented Volte for our mobile customers. We worked heavily on data center redundancy due to possible electricity crisis back in 2022, as you might remember. We evaluated and rolled out a new DDoS mitigation provider and a lot more. That's life, busy life as a voice engineer at Sipgate. But still, 2.5 years to update some Kamailio setups, that just felt way too long. A similar slide as on the one before. You can clearly see that at any given point in time, we had multiple different Kamailio versions running on multiple different Debian versions. For example, there were time ranges where we had 4 different patch versions of Kamailio, 2 different minor versions, and about 3 different Debian versions in parallel. Yeah, and some Kamailios were updated fairly regularly. Most of them weren't. What a mess. And it got even worse. Not only that it took a lot of time to go through all setups, we also ended up with heavily fragmented environments. During an update, we might implement a new feature like central logging or for just that setup. And over the time, we ended up with gaps between updated and not yet updated setups. And even worse, we had gaps between setups that were already updated, just not with the same feature set. And backporting of features became really difficult. It got so overwhelming that we actually organized all the features in a spreadsheet, as you can see. And as Confucius maybe once said, if you need a sheet, it's too complicated. And the reality is, we almost never found the time to backport features to earlier updated Kamailio setups. In the end, we had different Kamailio versions and different feature sets as well. Some Kamailio setups were containerized, some had central logging configured, some had meaningful visualizations on nice dashboards, and others didn't. Another example, our customer load balancers between IPv4 and IPv6, the setups were running on different Kamailio versions and different Debian versions because of a new Debian release came out in the middle of the 2 upgrade processes. Yeah. We met for a retreat. We do this once a year. We met in person, even though we are a fully remote team. We did it offsite, and the overall atmosphere was good, but we were slightly unhappy with our progress. Biggest agenda topic was, even though we work really hard, our Kamailios are still relatively old. How can we speed up this? And the result was we need a new strategy for Kamailio updates. Everyone had great ideas how to implement new shiny Kamailio setups. We collected all ideas and wishes and came out with a long list of things we'd love to do. We agreed on a minimal feature set. Every task had to comply with our big goal, automating Kamailio updates. We selected the following topics and put them on our to-do list. Container, make sure that every setup uses the same Debian and the same Kamailio version to have a common base for all setups. Tests, to avoid breaking things during an update, we needed sufficient test coverage. By integrating with our existing CI/CD pipelines, we can benefit from automated builds and rollouts. We needed a good rollout strategy that lets us test changes on a limited number of instances, at least in the production environment. And finally, make sure we have meaningful visualizations and metrics to detect unwanted changes as early as possible after the rollout. And to stay focused on Kamailio updates, we put some tasks explicitly on a not-to-do list. Refactoring, monitoring, alerting, metrics, logging, dependency updates. All of these are likely to break after a Kamailio update, so we decided to do this afterwards. For now, let's focus on Kamailio updates, and after we've updated all the Kamailio setups, let's put the focus on, for example, alerting, but then let's adjust that for all Kamailios consistently. These are the steps we have to go through. First, the preparation, write tests. The tricky part about tests is to find the right balance between coverage and velocity. Remember, we are not doing refactoring at this stage. So if our logic worked on a previous Kamailio version, it's very likely that it will work on a newer one. And visualizations, make sure to have at least basic visualizations to detect problems, as I said. Then reconstruct Kamailio build process. We use Sipgate's generic Debian base image, build a generic Kamailio image on top of it, transform all Ansible variables from config management into environment variables, copy Kamailio config into the container to create a service-specific image. And finally, run all the tests on the old Kamailio version to ensure nothing broke during the Docker migration. Then let's update Kamailio in our integration or in our test setup and make sure everything still passes. And after the update, after we updated the operating system on the corresponding VMs, so updating virtual machines to the latest operating systems automated by our infrastructure team. We have to start an automated workflow and we receive a fresh VM with all operating system related settings from config management. Yeah, and once everything's tested and the base is ready, continue with the new rollout strategy. If you're interested in integration test solutions, my colleague Benjamin Tietz gave a talk at Kamailio World 2023 about how we build integration tests at Sipgate. Check that out. You can find it on the Kamailio World's YouTube channel. We improved that since then, but it still follows the basic principles. And another solution could be use a service like ZipFront. We have an example for that. Our end-to-end test setup doesn't support IPv6 yet, so we use ZipFront to cover that. This is our new rollout strategy. A build gets triggered by several events when we update the Kamailio mirror repository, or when the Debian base image receives an update, or when we make changes to the corresponding Kamailio config. Then the build step, a specific Kamailio Docker image is built, as described in the previous slide. And after that, unit and integration tests will be checked. When the integration tests pass, rollout to development environment starts automatically, and after that, run end-to-end tests in development environment. And when the development environment tests pass, we have to manually confirm a limited rollout to production. We We manually check the visualizations for any irregularities, and depending on the type of change, we may wait for a grace period, for example, 24 hours for a new Kamailio version. And after that, the end-to-end tests in the production environment run again. In the rollout process, some tasks are triggered automatically. You can see that by the robot head, while others require manual confirmation. And to update, for example, Kamailio in production, we only have 3 manual steps. First, update Sipgate's Kamailio's mirror repository, then limited rollout to production, and finally, full rollout to production. That's the procedure, and it looks the same for multiple Kamailio setups. Same triggers for all of them. We split the container build per setup, with each one rolling out to different servers independently, and you get the idea for any number of setups. And another important point, the time from triggering the build to the first manual confirmation, that was the limited production rollout, is about 13 minutes. And since all builds and rollouts are in parallel, this duration is not multiplied by the number of Kamailio setups. So, every Kamailio setup has the same operating system and the same Kamailio version. We have a very good version consistency. We changed the rollout strategy from one after maybe another to big bang deployment. Every setup at once. We get immediate feedback if something isn't working. Faster deployment cycle, and no Kamailio left behind. The test coverage, because of the higher blast radius of our rollout strategy, we have to be sure that everything works. So we need a very good test coverage. Manual validation. Many steps, or most steps are automated, but we have manual validation steps to step in if something is fishy. And we have fine-grained observability with our visualization. And we have preparation for the next features. We choose to not change, for example, alerting in parallel to Kamailio updates. But now that every setup has the same base, we could proceed with the next feature. And the next feature will be easier to implement on all setups because they are more aligned. As a reminder, this was our old update strategy. We updated the setups one by one. And this is our new strategy. Every system needs to be migrated once to the new deployment pipeline. Those are marked with the small red rectangles on the slide. And after that initial migration, any system that already runs on the new pipeline will automatically receive Kamailio updates whenever we release a new version via our internal mirror repository. So when we release Kamailio 5.8.6, only 3 setups had been migrated and were updated. But our goal is clear. We aim to have most of the setups migrated very soon. That was our journey through updating Kamailio setups at Sipgate. Here's a quick summary. Make time for offsite retreats to get good ideas. Align your Kamailio setups. It reduces complexity and fragmentation. Limit the feature set to focus on updates. Remember our not to-do list. Write tests before updating. It saves you from surprises later. Automate as much as possible for speed and reliability, and rely on manual validation where needed. In our case, it's update the Kamailio repository and production rollout. And that was my presentation. Thanks for listening. If you have any questions or feedback for me, feel free to talk afterwards or connect with me on Mastodon. And also, one last thing, my colleagues Benjamin, Dennis, and Markus are here as well. You can reach out to them anytime. Thanks.
Thank you. Questions? We have time. We have here.
Yeah, thanks. I was just wondering, you've mentioned that you are testing like a mid-production, means that's a limited production layout environment. What is the purpose of this, means, and not having, for example, a dedicated stage environment for this? What's the benefits of rolling out just to production, even in limited quantities?
Yeah. Yeah, we had a lot of, in the past we had some issues with things that only occurs in the production environment because of the bring your own device policy. We have a lot of different user agents and we weren't able to detect that in the development environment. So a limited production rollout, yeah, you don't break all all instances, only a small number of them.
Okay, we have here.
I just saw in the presentation that you were shown the versioning in a XLS table. So, and I'm wondering, do you use anything to evaluate the software versioning, like automated system to evaluate it? Like maybe Ansible, Ansible facts or something like that to run all over the servers and get the version in the same time for the L? Yeah, we do this with normal Prometheus monitoring, and we have a dashboard for that at our Grafana. Yeah, yeah. But that was handwritten. It wasn't automatic. Yeah.
Okay, we have Sebastian. Tricky question.
Thanks for the presentation. From what I learned in the last year, when updating Kamailio or other software, the real problems only occur after you updated the last system. Because sometimes you break a feature and then due to round-robin load balancing and stuff, the clients choose the working old system and then and you don't notice it. And after you updated the last system, your customer support drowns in complaints. How does a rollback strategy look like? Yeah, you have to have a rollback strategy. Yeah, but I know what you're meaning. Sometimes it's, I said we wait for 24 hours, but maybe, from time to time it took a couple of days until the support team came with some things. Yeah. You have to have a rollback strategy is my answer to that.
Okay, I think, thanks.
Another slide, if you're interested in the Kamailio code challenge, here's a QR code for that. If you are lazy and don't want to type the URL.
Yeah, so picture that and participate. Thanks again, Jonas. And yeah, there are 4 guys from his team, the Sipgate, and they are available for your questions. And do consider coming to developer event in November. Probably will be again. They are nice hosts. There is no registration there, but yeah, you have to support your traveling to there. Now, thanks. And